Hi, thanks for joining me on HR Chalk Talk. I'm Brent Houchin, founder of Houchin Consulting and co-founder of Tech People Resources, also known as TPR. The HR Chalk Talk podcast is here to provide information to those in human resources, those in leadership positions, and those who simply want to know more about HR best practices. Today's subject is setting expectations in the workplace, and I'm excited to have my co-founder of Tech People Resources here with me today. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you, Brent. So excited to be here.
So Dana's going to talk to us a bit about setting expectations. She recently posted a blog on this subject on our techpeopleresources.com site, and I thought this is definitely one of those subjects that deserves a little bit more information from the writer of the blog. So Dana, tell us more about this.
Well, as you know, I'm a huge fan of expectations and setting crystal clear expectations. A lot of people think that, of course, we have expectations for our employees. We have job descriptions and we have processes, but that doesn't nearly cover what you need to do and the depth to which you need to go to set clear enough expectations so that you're not frustrated as a leader and your employees can succeed.
So that's actually a really good point. I've been in leadership. You are currently and been in leadership. So let me ask a question. I'm a manager and I have employees that work for me and I'm noticing that deadlines are not being met. I noticed that, or I thought that I told them pretty clearly, well, it's due by Tuesday at 3. Well, Tuesday at 3 is approaching and no one's really quite ready. What are the things I should have done at the beginning to ensure that they understood what my expectations were and how they could meet the expectations?
Well, one of the things that I like to recommend to clients is to sit down and have an open discussion with your employee, preferably at the beginning of the relationship. But of course, people have not done this in many situations and they need to reset expectations. So what I would say is the first thing you need to do is you have to sit down, have a one-on-one discussion with your employee, and talk about really basic things like how to communicate with each other. How do I prefer as a leader that my employee communicate with me? Say, for instance, if they feel like they're going to miss a deadline. When do I want to know? How do I want to know? What kind of discussion are we going to have about that? And you need to have discussions about how you're going to give feedback when expectations are not met to your employees so that they know up front. There's no question that you're going to be giving them feedback. They should expect feedback. It's not the end of the world every time you say you want to talk to them. And when you give that feedback, then since it's expected, it's easier to digest for that person.
So I've had that conversation with them. Is there anything that I need to do on a follow-up or in writing with them?
Absolutely. Always want to document. Documentation is key in anything HR. It's also a really good thing to, what we often recommend is to, with a real non-serious issue like a first-time discussion, have that discussion with your employee, then send them a follow-up email with a read receipt on it. Then you have that documentation. It's documented that it was sent. It's documented that it was read. It's a follow-up, real quick bullet point of this is what we talked about. Here's what we need to do moving forward, and this is my expectation. I'm confident that you're going to be successful. Thanks for meeting with me.
So I love that from the standpoint of for the employer or for the manager. What does that follow-up do for them as the employee?
Yeah, great point. For the employee, that gives them something to refer back to. It's a guiding expectation. It's in writing. They know it happened. They remember that conversation. They know that they are accountable to it because they've acknowledged that conversation by reading the email. And it just helps them to understand that, it's a serious expectation, but it's something to refer back to in case there's any question at all.
I remember when I used to do the very thing you're talking about, and I agree with 100%, that I would tell the employee, and this is a true statement, it's not just for fluff, but I would tell them this is just as much for you as it is for me, so that if you ever need to refer back to it, you have it in writing also, and you don't have to come to me and say, what was it that we agreed upon again? So it's definitely one of those great documents that people are using from both sides. And it's not a disciplinary or a gotcha, but more of a, hey, we both are on the same page with this. Would you agree?
I totally agree with that. Sometimes, just having a conversation about an expectation that wasn't met is unnerving for the employee or your team member. And so with that heightened emotional state, it's hard for them to kind of remember the details. So I think it's extremely helpful for the employee as well as the leader.
I love your point actually about the remembering, because I can't remember what day it is from day to day. So this is definitely one of those things I like to be able to look back at. And my leaders have given me expectations. In fact, when I've been a new higher level management person, I've gone to my leader and said, please, can you share with me your expectations? And in return, can I share with you mine of you? What are your thoughts on the employees sharing their expectations of their leader?
Well, I think that is, really what you want to have in that initial conversation that you have with your employee, where you're discussing the relationship that you're going to have in this business, in this working setting, because that way you can understand how best to communicate. How is that employee going to receive the information that you need to give them? And them being able to take a minute and tell you, the things that they need from you is equally as important, because you can then put that into to practice with them when you're setting expectations, or even when you're recognizing them. Some people don't like to be recognized in public. Some people do. There's a lot of things that you need to flesh out and kind of get out on the table at the very beginning of that relationship, or at the beginning of resetting those expectations, because this is how you know how best to work with each other.
I love your thoughts and tips on all of this, because it's important that leaders understand how their employees receive information, and that would include receiving expectations. Obviously, that's information, it's communication, it's a way in which to get the job done together as a team or individually. Any other tips or tricks that you want to share with those listening today?
Yeah, I think the main point that I would say, for this sort of high-level discussion about expectations with your employees is the other big thing that I don't see and I think is extremely helpful when it's put into place is to always be able to tie the strategy, the business goals to that employee's daily work, so that they understand clearly and could speak to what is it that we do here and how is my work impacting the success of this organization, so that they could clearly tell anybody that story, because they know that they're important and they know how important every single thing that they do and every expectation is to contribute to the greater success of the organization. It gives them a sense of purpose, and I think that sense of purpose has to be mapped out in the very beginning of those expectation conversations, because a sense of purpose is huge for employee satisfaction.
I'm over here shaking my head up and down in total agreement with Dana as she's speaking. So we're at about 10 minutes, so we're going to close. We want to remind you that you can always contact us at Tech People Resources for learning and development opportunities on any HR-related subject, or you can always reach out to me at Houchin Consulting for HR assistance of any kind. We are here to help. And remember, it's about respect. Your employees will thank you. Tune in next week for HR Chalk Talk as I review the subject of diversity and inclusion in recruitment. The more you know, the more you will succeed. Thanks for joining us today and have a great week.